Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Elizabeth Holmes. It is hurricane season here in North Carolina, and while you may be thinking about how to protect your home from storm damage, veterinarians say you should be thinking about protecting your pets too. Storms can create environments that are unsafe for your pet's health, and experts are raising concerns as we see more serious storms. WRAL climate change reporter Liz McLaughlin has been reporting on hurricanes and how they can impact our environment, our families, and now our furry friends. Liz, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us how this story even came to be. What made you start thinking about how animals are even impacted by hurricanes?
I'll tell you, I will always think about pets when it comes to storms after covering Hurricane Harvey in Texas for NBC News. And that storm, if you might remember, in 2017, it caused devastating flooding and it killed 89 people. And I'll never forget this man running up to me in tears because the water rose so fast and he didn't know where his two dogs were. And I'm a dog owner myself, and it really struck me that it's not just people who need a plan. Our pets do too. And as we're seeing stronger and more frequent storms, plus heavier rainfall intensity, the rainfall just here in Raleigh is about 21% higher since the 70s. The flood risk is only increasing. And so that flooding, which we saw again this summer with Tropical Storm Chantal, creates actually a breeding ground for mosquitoes. They can multiply in something as small as a bottle cap. So through this veterinary event randomly in Louisiana, I learned that heartworm cases are climbing, especially after storms. And that's something many pet owners just may not think about until it's too late.
I remember seeing just hurricane after hurricane, those really harrowing images of people holding their pets. It's really sad. And then even to think about what could happen to them after the fact is also sad. What are maybe some other risks that pets might face in the aftermath of these kinds of disasters?
So, of course, the heartworm issue, because the flooding leaves behind stagnant water, so that accelerates mosquito breeding. By the way, the mosquitoes are not slowing down, especially here in the Southeast. It's really year-round. Like, I got my first mosquito bite in February of this year, early February. So, and they don't just bring heartworm. It's all kinds of diseases that pose threats for humans too. If there's a power outage, a lot of times people will open their doors or windows. And this can be a big problem for cat owners, especially because a lot of people have indoor cats and they just don't think about it. Also, maybe with the storm or with flooding, you're displaced, right? So you're moving a pet. So this can make cats especially exposed to heartworm risk where they maybe weren't before, and there's actually no treatment. So if they do get heartworm, it's bad news bears. So that's something really, prevention is critical for those cat owners. And then even for dogs, treatment is expensive. Vets say the cost of heartworm treatment for those dogs is the same as 12 years of prevention, which is the lifespan of many dogs. So really, it's just something you should do. I know I've put it off before, forgotten, but it's just really top of mind now. But during storms, pets lose access to vet care. You might not have your medications that might impact them or medical records. And then, just evacuations can lead to pets being lost or surrendered. And shelters also report overcrowding often after disasters as those displaced animals come in.
And I'm sure that might lead to issues too if there is overcrowding, potentially unvaccinated animals. That seems like another problem in itself too. Wow. Do you find, and I imagine this is the case, that a lot of people, if they're preparing for a hurricane, they might not be thinking about these things, right? They might be thinking about their home or something like that. I feel like it might be common for people to just not think about maybe protecting from heartworm or something like that that they might see after a hurricane.
That's why I just thought it was worth doing a story on it. It's really not something that's a big part of the conversation. I feel like people are focused on food, shelter, water, and even in lots of hurricane prep coverage I've done, it's just not really the top of the, checklist. And so many of us, have pets. There are furry friends, there are children for a lot of people, a big important part of our life. And so it really should be, top of mind, or at least it's good to have a reminder for people. It just can get overlooked, and a lot of people realize, oh, I should have done this, when it's too late. So really, vets and shelters are urging families to kind of add two things to the checklist: that heartworm prevention and a pet go bag.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, nearly a year ago, Hurricane Helene hit the western part of the state. I know WRAL has done extensive coverage after that. You have reported on multiple hurricanes at this point. Have you talked to people about kind of this revelation at all of just not knowing or maybe not even being prepared to have to potentially rescue their animal, like full stop, after a hurricane?
So, thousands of dogs and cats were displaced and some had to be surrendered during Helene. The heartworm issue wasn't as bad there because it was in the fall and just the mountainous, cooler climate. It's not as bad as the coast or here in the Triangle as far as mosquitoes. But I actually spoke to one woman in Banner Elk who lost 3 of her precious doggos when her home washed away in Helene. Just heartbreaking. We were looking at pictures together. And no matter how much you prepare, tragedies still happen. But her story did inspire me to just put my own dog's little life jacket in his travel bag. The SPCA did tell me that ringworm was an issue after Helene. That fungus also thrives in moist conditions. So I think just a lot of people are preparing differently. And I think that storm was definitely a wake-up call that inland flooding is a real threat, especially now, not just with climate change kind of increasing that rainfall, but also development. I mean, our population is surging, and that's changing where stormwater is going. So the flood risk is really changing here. And a lot of people called Asheville, places in the mountains in western North Carolina, a climate haven. There is really no such thing now. So we really should all have this top of mind, no matter where you live.
That was going to be my next question for you. Obviously, with climate change, there's the threat of just more serious storms, us seeing something like this more often. And do you think that this kind of reporting will make people think differently and maybe be more prepared if they hear something like this?
I sure hope so. It's what gives me purpose in my job. And, I think many of the people that I've spoken with who've been through really harrowing ordeals, they're telling their story so that other people might not have to go through it. Maybe they stayed in their house a little too long or didn't heed the evacuation warning or something like that. But I think it's just human nature that often, there's so much going on in the world and in our lives that sometimes preparing for a disaster that hasn't happened yet, it's just a hard thing to prioritize until it's right there in front of you, until it happens to you. But again, hoping that, getting the message out. I know just in my own life, even some of these things might be on my to-do list. Oh, make the go bag, make the prep kit, maybe I've put it off, but it's helped me just at least, okay, let's just put it on the calendar and just get it done, usually in the early part of the year, or just kind of have one already ready to go.
My last question for you, probably the most important one for people who are listening to this, is what is in that go bag? And is there anything that they can do maybe at the vet to prepare for something like this?
Sure. So yeah, there's a few things that you can do as a pet owner. For that go bag, really food, at least 5 days of food, I'd say. And, I have my dog on this fancy refrigerated food, but we just have like a couple cans or, some kibble in a sealed baggie, something that doesn't need to be in the refrigerator just in case of that emergency. Medications for that much time as well. A crate, often people just kind of throw the dog in the car or something like that, but maybe you're staying with maybe you're staying in a situation where it's not the same situation you had at home. And sometimes then people, if they don't have the right kind of equipment, end up having to surrender because there are issues with who they're staying with. So, that's something to keep in mind, like a carrier and those vet records. And actually a picture of your pet, because sometimes when pets go missing, was a suggestion from the SPCA, maybe your phone got lost in the storm, you don't have things backed up. But if you kind of already have a picture, they can make a flyer, or get it in their database. So it can help you find your pet faster. That's something I wouldn't have thought about. Upgrading, microchipping your pet. Sometimes, people put it off or it can be expensive, but the SPCA in Wake County has these events where it's just $5. So getting that microchipped updated is a good thing. And maybe an ID tag, with your information, phone number, address. And just they suggest year-round heartworm prevention. You can actually, if doing those monthly pills is hard to remember, there's an injection now. So you could get it every 6 months or every year where you don't have to, try to remember every month yet another thing.
Well, Liz, thanks so much for talking with us today and sharing this very important information. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. If you've listened to this podcast on WRAL, on the WRAL News app, you can also find it in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the show so you don't miss an episode.